Hey gang, welcome to Big Brother and the Hodling Company. It's a podcast about music and Web3 and trying to fend off Big Brother. I'm a Keegan voice. Today I spoke with Alec D'Alelio. He's a musician, collector, and builder at the vanguard of the Web3 creator economy. Aside from making music, D'Alelio also leads growth at Reveel, an on-chain revenue share protocol, and he leads governance at Campfire, which is a gathering place for music makers and culture builders. We chatted about documenting his musical life on the internet, which started on YouTube at the age of 11 and now continues across various Web3 platforms and protocols. And we dived into the beginnings of his Web3 journey, which started in 2017 as an intern for Berklee School of Music professor, serial entrepreneur, and Web3 advocate George Howard, where he was transcribing and digesting years of interviews that started to make him a Web3 believer too. Hope you all enjoyed the conversation. Here we go. Hey Alec, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. To begin, I always like to start, well, at the beginning and learn a little bit about your story and where you grew up and when your relationship with music started.
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in Massachusetts, about 15 minutes north of Boston in a town called Wakefield. I was actually just chatting with some people about this last night, my kind of musical origin story, because
Nice.
I mentioned that I started playing instruments when I was like 10 years old. And the people who I was chatting with were like, well, how did you start so early? Why did you start so early? I'm one of those people who was lucky enough to grow up in a very musical household. So my dad was in a band growing up. He and his band, they would practice in our basement. So
Cool.
like, yeah, we would often have like a full band down there. We had a drum kit, couple guitars, and all that. So I was around music from a very young age. And the first time I started playing music myself was in the fourth grade, when I started playing trumpet in my school band. Really, I had just moved to a new town and it was in a new school, and I didn't know anybody, and I didn't want to play sports. So it seemed like a natural thing to do. I was like,
Went for the
band
trumpet.
sounds cool. I wasn't crazy about it for the first year or so, but I ended up picking up a guitar about a year or so later, and yeah, the rest is kind of history. I've been playing guitar ever since. Now, doing more kind of singer songwriter stuff, producing my own music, releasing my own music, both in Web3 and on DSPs and all that, as well as building community and building tooling to support other musicians and other kind of multimedia creators to do the same thing.
Cool. Amazing. Thank you. I mean, first and foremost, what kind of band was your dad in? What was their name?
They're called Split Risk. I might have some of their stickers right here actually.
Cool.
These really OG. Yeah. Split Risk can join the fan club on Reverb Nation.
Nice. Cool.
But yeah, they were like a classic rock band. They did a lot of covers, but had some original stuff too. My dad was lead guitar.
Cool. Makes sense. Runs in the family.
Hmm.
What was the best cover that they did?
Hmm. They just did like a lot of really classic stuff. Like they would do a lot of Beatles kind of stuff. The one that sticks out in my head is it's probably not like the best one. For some reason, this is the one that came to mind. Was "Obla Di Obla Da" by the Beatles, which is just a classic song.
Yeah.
But they did all
Nice.
that kind of Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith stuff of the era.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, I mean that's the music I grew up with too. So there's a soft spot in my
Yeah,
in my heart for dad rock.
they did a lot of Tom Petty.
Oh, cool. Cool. I love
Hmm.
Tom Petty. Um, Great. Okay, so take us through the steps that got you there. So you started playing guitar at
Hmm.
like fifth grade,
Yep.
and you ended up here now working with Reveal and exploring these new on-chain music mechanisms, community building techniques, things like that. So take us you know through the journey of how you got to be here, like where. Yeah, I'll just leave it open-ended for now.
Sure. Yeah. I started pretty soon after I started playing guitar, I started making content. And remember, I was like 11 or 12 at the time. I think it was like
Right.
2008 when I posted my first YouTube video. And pretty much ever since then, on and off, I've been documenting my journey as a musician publicly on YouTube.
Mm.
So I think like this whole discussion of the creator economy, and a lot of like when we talk about Web3 tooling for creators, the discussion is kind of like it's a creator economy discussion that's been going on for a long time. So I have a lot of empathy for that experience as someone who's been making content for a long time. Um, I would say that my when I really started thinking about like music technology and like how to leverage new technologies as a musician, specifically Web3 and blockchain technologies, was in 2017. So I basically that summer I was in college. I applied to a bunch of internships in the music industry. I applied to all the big record labels and Spotify, et cetera, and none of that panned out. So what I ended up doing instead was kind of doing cold emailing, basically like all these different people in the music industry, just to say like, "Hey, I'm a college student. I'll work for free. Like, do you have anything cool I can help you with?" And luckily, someone named George Howard got back to me. I don't know if you're connected with George at all, but he was one of the founders of TuneCore. He's a professor at Berklee and an expert in copyright law. And he had been gathering between like 2015 and 2017. He'd been writing about like the promise of blockchain for music, right? And he'd been talking to people in the music industry about how this new technology could reshape things. And
Mm.
he basically brought me in. He said, like, listen, I've got years worth of interviews I need transcribed, like just writing that I've done that isn't organized. And I'd love to turn all of that into a book, but I don't
Mm.
have time to do it. So he basically, I came on as like his intern and he gave me all of this material and we turned it into a book and published it. So
Cool.
that was my introduction to this space. And as you can imagine, 2017, like music NFTs weren't really a thing yet. NFTs as a whole weren't really a thing yet that had any
Hmm.
meaningful traction. So it's been very interesting over the last few years to see these things that that the book dealt with in theory starting to take shape in practice and actually change a lot of artists' lives. And now we have whole kind of economies built around these things. There's still obviously a lot of room to grow, but
Hmm.
I would say that's like the through line for me, right? Because music is a lifelong passion. As someone who's played music the better part of my life, has created content, and also for the last 5 or 6 years been kind of on the bleeding edge of the music side of crypto. I think it's funny, like in life, a lot of you often don't see how connected certain events are in your life until like
Mm.
you have some hindsight. And now in
Sure.
hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, it makes sense how all of these things are related to each other, even though it's just been my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that must have been fascinating, sort of a deep dive into this guy's like, myriad conversations about the blockchain as sort of your, first entry point into this space. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously at the time you had already spent quite a few years on like YouTube, in more like traditional creator economy platforms. And I'm curious if you remember like a specific moment going through all of this material where it just clicked. It's like, oh yeah, this is like kind of like the thing that I'm doing, but I could extrapolate it to this, and this is why it's meaningful.
It's hard for me to pinpoint a moment during that process where it clicked,
Or maybe it happened
to be
later.
honest with you. But I mean, I can pinpoint a recent moment I had where, because I think like I said before, there's a long way to go. A lot
Mm.
of the foundations are being built for like the new creative industries, if we want to call it that.
Hmm.
Um, and a moment like that I've had in the past 6 months or so, specifically the very beginning of this year, was when I became really active on Lens Protocol.
Hmm.
And which, for those who are not familiar, Lens Protocol, it's a decentralized social graph, basically, a protocol where they have all these different apps. It's open for developers to build applications on there, and the value prop for a creator for something like Lens is okay. There's all these different apps that are all part of a larger ecosystem, an on-chain ecosystem, and you can build engagement, build a following on one of these apps, and then if you go sign into a brand new app, you're actually bringing that engagement and you're bringing that following with you. Because when you make a post on LensTube, which is like the Lens version of YouTube, it doesn't just live on LensTube; it gets broadcast to the entire Lens network. And so that was a big light bulb moment for me, where I had this realization. I've used YouTube for so many years. I've gotten millions of views on YouTube. I've had over, 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, which sounds like a lot to some people, I'm sure, but that was never enough to convert to any meaningful audience on other platforms,
Mm-hmm.
Uh, nor has it really been enough to convert to any meaningful monetization.
Mm-hmm.
um I'm a YouTube partner. I get, like a little, like 30-40 bucks per month because I run some
Mm-hmm.
ads on my videos, but nothing crazy, right? But
Mm-hmm.
with Lens, if I had started 10 years ago or 15 years ago on Lens and built up that same kind of following, I would be able to take it with me. And I would be able to leverage other forms of content to build that fan base. So, and not only that, but you have the on-chain relationship to the people who are subscribing to you, who are collecting from you. So you can monetize that directly via collectible posts, paid posts, but also you now have that direct kind of on-chain uh, connection, and there's a lot of insight that you can gain from. There's now tools that allow you to get really nitty gritty and looking at, okay, who are the people who are collecting from me, or in the Lens's case, following me or subscribe to me. What how old on average are their wallets? What NFT collections do they hold on average? Like all of these data points. Um, so that's been a big kind of light bulb, because I think about creators who are starting now, who are like 12, 13. Like I was really young when I started, right? You've got
Mm-hmm.
a new generation of content creators who, if we make the right moves as the stewards of these new tools and the builders of
Mm-hmm.
these new tools, that like promise of the creator economy is a lot more interesting for this new class of creators potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, the promise of data portability that exists on something like the Lens protocol is really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And it really it's become more tangible, I think, in, recent happenings with like Twitter, for example, and like Twitter being taken over by, by a megalomaniac whose direction for the company probably doesn't sit well with a large portion of, the user base. And, it creates a lot of opportunity for alternatives, but also is a reality check that's like, if Twitter goes down, to your point, like all of the value that you've ever accrued, all of, your entire social graph goes down with it. It's not
Yeah,
portable. So when you can decentralize that across and then like a protocol instead of, centralized platform, that's really powerful.
absolutely. Yeah, I don't think that people ever would have considered the fact that Twitter could just disappear tomorrow
Yeah.
until this past year, to your
Hmm.
point. So it is definitely an interesting time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'm curious now that uh you're in this space, and you have been for some time, but you've also have the experience of uh YouTube and having spent a lot of time building community there. For people who are, say, 12 or 22 or whatever, like starting their journey as a music maker, as a creator,
Hmm.
what advice would you give them? Where would you suggest that they start to invest their time and energy? I'm guessing Lens Protocol, but if you can talk about like some of, the apps particularly that are being built on that, and if there are any other
Yeah.
spaces that you would encourage.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll start with Lens, just because we're already talking about it, but there's a lot of other
Hmm.
things come to mind as well. Um, I think Lens is great. I mean, it is currently still in closed beta,
Hmm.
but I think that for folks who want to have kind of a leg up, educating yourself early, like let's say that closed beta ends and it opens up to everyone in 2 months. Ideally, by that point, you already have a good idea of what is possible there and already have somewhat of an idea, maybe some existing relationships with other creators and builders in that ecosystem so that you can hit the ground running when it opens up. So yeah, I would definitely say paying attention to Lens is not probably not a bad idea. Riff is one of my favorite apps on Lens. They're kind of like the go-to music platform over there. Sound XYZ is probably the most ubiquitous music platform in Web3 at this point, and I would
Hmm.
definitely recommend paying attention there. They are in the same kind of position, right? Where they've said, I'm not dropping the alpha. They've said this. They are going to be opening that platform up to any
Hmm.
artist who wants to mint their music there. So I mean that's a great model. I think they've been the first music NFT platform that's done like a really really meaningful amount of volume and effect. Improved uh, a lot of individual artists' lives through being able to monetize on there. So check that out. Even if you don't collect, even if you don't mint anything, just go listen to music, see what's out there, see who else is minting their stuff. And then finally, I would say platforms like Reveal are also a good place to pay attention because the payout layer is such an important piece of all this, right? The promise of
Hmm.
blockchain is trustless and transparent, like value transfer and sharing value, sharing. In our case, we support creators, collectives, DAOs, groups of people who are working together and who are creating value together to share their revenue in a way that doesn't require any trust, right? You can, with Reveal, design a revenue share agreement however you want to. You don't need to know how to code or anything. You can use our app to do it. You can mint that revenue share smart contract, and that's owned by you entirely. We never own those revenue share smart contracts. We're working on a few things. I can't go into extreme detail about where we're headed, but what I will say, and the reason that I bring this up now, is that soon it's going to be very, very easy to use Reveal to access your earnings as like a collaborator on a project. Maybe you're working with someone who is very Web3 native, but you've never used Web3. You don't have a crypto wallet set up. You
Hmm.
would still be able in that instance to access your earnings on Reveal without needing to set up your own wallet, without needing to fund your own wallet, without even necessarily needing to hold your crypto. Maybe you're getting it directly in fiat. So these experiences, both on the payout side, on the minting and the creation side, on the social side, are all going to continue to develop and to get smoother, hopefully, and more accessible. But the unique the time to kind of develop a unique advantage is now. And the unique advantage is developing a deep understanding of the tools before the experience is so accessible that everybody else gets it intuitively, right? Because if you
Right.
can, the earlier you can kind of understand the tools and their value, the better positioned you're going to be to take advantage of the wave.
Right. I'm curious coming back, to reveal how you first got involved. I spoke with Adrian, actually with Adrian and Black Dave at the same time. It was right after,
Nice.
it was right after Reveal facilitated like that crazy whatever it was, 143 wallet split or something that he did, which was really cool. Um, and yeah, I'm curious like how you met the crew and how you got involved.
Actually, the um, Jordan, you may know her as Taro, was the first
Mm,
member of the Reveal team that I met because I'm a collector of hers.
mm,
I was a founding member, I should say, of BeatStyle. We were one of the first like music NFT collector DAOs back in early 2021, and I was doing an interview series for BeatStyle, and she was one of the first creators who I reached out. to speak with. So we got connected and we became friends, and so I was following along with her journey, and that was right around the time that she started working at Reveel. So I was a fan of Reveel, and then I met, of course, the rest of the Reveel team. I met at NFT NYC that year. Um, I was a fan of them for a while. I had used
Mm.
Reveel as a creator before I actually joined the team, and I think that that's, at least for me, that's how I always prefer to work. I always want to work on projects that I personally have a use for, just because it's easier to explain and it's easier to kind of sell someone else on something that you actually use yourself.
For sure.
So anyway, it's been about 6 months since I joined the team. My role specifically is protocol growth and integrations. So around the time that I joined, we had just launched our SDK, which what I explained earlier, I kind of explained how you would use the Reveal app, right? The app allows you to design these revenue share agreements and mint them as smart contracts. You can also manage your revenue, withdraw your revenue in the app. But so that's kind of like the creator user facing side of things. But a lot of, a lot of the work that we've done is actually on the more under the hood kind of stuff, the protocol itself, and how do you make that protocol accessible to developers, right? Because we don't only want this kind of revenue share standard that we're promoting to be available on our app. Like ideally, anywhere where you're minting an NFT collection, you would be able to accompany that with a revenue share agreement, right? So
Hmm.
I was kind of brought on to help promote the SDK and to facilitate integrations of our protocol on other marketplaces and other platforms. And that's still very top of mind for us. So anyone who's listening who is building, an NFT platform, a marketplace, DAO tooling, even anything that is designed to help, creators or any group of people manage their revenue, manage their NFTs, manage payouts, we could probably help facilitate a really smooth way of doing that. So that's been my focus with Reveal. We have some really exciting stuff coming the next couple of months. I won't say too much. I will say that I feel like it's going to be an L2 summer. Uh, that's
Hint,
that's all
hint.
I'll say on that. But yeah, we are we're currently available on 5 different chains. We're on Ethereum, Polygon, Optimism, Arbitrum, and Aurora. So we're already very accessible on those chains. It's just going to be a whole lot easier um, as we continue to ship. By the time you're listening to this stuff might already be live.
All right, cool. Again, you heard it here first. And I'm curious, I think I saw via Lens, I believe. I think there, there's like a post on Lenster, maybe it's Twitter, where you were doing like the 100-day coding challenge, I
Hmm.
think. And I think I saw that your ultimate goal was to build an app on Lens.
Correct.
And I'm curious if that, has contours, shape. Is there an idea that, like, is there something that you already know you want to build?
Great question. So for those who are not familiar with the 100 days of code thing, it's kind of an open-ended challenge that a lot of people who are brand new to coding will use it as a framework to hold themselves accountable. So it's a hashtag. If you search hashtag 100 days of code on Twitter, on LinkedIn, even on Instagram, you'll probably find, a million posts of people doing this. So I just started yesterday 100
Mm,
days of code. This is my second time doing it. So the first time I did 100 days of code, I knew absolutely nothing. I was
mm,
starting from zero, whereas this time I'm starting from a pretty decent foundation and looking to get to like that level of being pretty adept and being able to build more interesting stuff.
mm,
So yes, I do want to build a Lens app. That is the goal. I
mm.
don't have a specific vision for it yet. This is only day 2, by the way. I haven't done my coding challenge for today yet. So I've really only gotten through one day so far. One thing I'd love to see on Lens is a secondary marketplace for specifically for music.
Mm.
So that's something that's kind of on my mind. But other than that, I'm very open minded, right? I'm sure that as I go through the 100-day journey. New ideas will probably emerge naturally as I learn different things. So check back with me in 99 days and we'll see where we're at.
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna say you've got 99 days to figure it out, so you have time.
Yep.
Um,
99 days can fly by, but also a lot
True.
of a lot of magic can happen in 99 days. So
Indeed, indeed. Time is a flat circle, as they say. It's
I've
all
never heard that
relative.
before.
It's a great line from True Detective, the first season of True Detective.
Life
I
is a
think.
flat circle.
Yeah, I think it's a Matthew McConaughey quote. His character, anyway.
Love it.
So thinking about all of these things holistically, you're working on the 100 Days of Code. You've got your gig, at Reveal. Obviously, you're personally invested in your own music career. I'm curious, like where your aspirations lie primarily. Like, how do you envision balancing a future across tech and music?
Yeah, I mean, I will say like it's always a balancing act for sure. Something I've had to kind of put to the side recently that used to be a big focus of mine was collecting. For a long time I was very active as a collector and I wanted to hear every single song that dropped on Sound. I would be on Sound every day listening to new music and trying to collect as many things as I could, like trying to build a collection of like rare music NFTs. And I don't really have the energy or the resources to sustain that right now because I'm investing more in things like my music. So I would say that I think I'm pretty good at balancing like two things at a time. There's more than like two big buckets and it gets difficult.
Hmm.
But I definitely I love getting to be a part of building like things on the tech and product side.
Hmm.
Um, like I said before, oftentimes the things that I'm building are things that I would want to use myself, and they're things that my friends are using, and that my friends who are oftentimes artists as well have a need for. So for me, it actually like is a the balance comes a little bit more naturally, like maintaining my creative side while also building on the tech side. I will say something that is a goal for me over the next couple of years is to do more locally, like
Mm.
play more shows, organize more shows and events, and figure out how that local community and that local scene can contribute to the stuff I'm doing in Web3 and online. Um, because over the past couple of years, I've been so heavily invested in Web3. I mean, from a time and energy perspective, more than anything
Right.
else, that I think it's been too easy to deprioritize like being present locally. But the older, with every year, I'm like, I think that it actually might make more sense to do the opposite, like make a splash locally and let that start to influence how I approach things online. And that's specifically with regard to like my creative practice and like my music career.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I was talking to somebody yesterday, kind of about the same thing, and even as from a more abstract perspective, thinking locally across the internet as well
Mm,
also makes sense. And
sure.
Web3 is sort of championing that. Instead of thinking, on like Spotify terms of trying to be as big as possible, scale as much as possible, have as many monthly listeners as possible.
Hmm.
Ultimately, those those are vanity metrics that don't, as convert to real value other than like $30 to $40 a month that you get to from YouTube. And on the other hand, if you're able to remove a lot of the intermediaries and actually connect directly with people and forge actual bonds that you can cultivate with your time and energy in the same way that you would by playing local shows. Like it's those two
Hmm.
things to me in my mind sort of go hand in hand. They make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's just a mindset, I think, to your point that I'm trying to cultivate a bit more. I think when you have a new space, when you have with a lot of excitement where everybody who's a part of it has that same kind of like, you know, what's the word? Like rose-colored glasses to a degree.
Right.
about it. I feel like Web3 music specifically, there was like a good year-long stretch there where there were so many people who joined the space and kind of just became all in on it. There was so
Hmm.
much excitement. And yeah, I think that while that was a lot of fun, I think that it is definitely healthier for for everyone to determine, you know, what is most personally important to them, and the differentiation of like my artist brand will come over time, right? Because I'm going to move in a particular way that um we were kind of all pigeonholed for a little while there with the standards of like how to drop on certain platforms, like how to communicate
Hmm.
about your drops, how to do it as a Web3 music artist.
Right.
Um, there's a lot of room for creativity, in my
Yeah.
opinion, at this point. And I love the trend that more artists are leaning toward doing things their own way, owning their own contracts, experimenting, not just doing things the way that they've been done. And I'm excited to see how that develops.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. I feel like the openness is both a pro and a con because it sort of requires that you really spend time in this space to understand what the tools at your disposal are. But like
Mm-hmm.
working with something like an NFT, which is, kind of infinitely programmable, you can create entire worlds. You can fully customize the experience that surrounds your art, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, but without any sort of limitations, because we're so used to to thinking within the contours of a platform like Spotify, like this is how it works. And then people spend, so much time and energy trying to figure out how to game and optimize specific platforms. But when you
Mm-hmm.
can actually like remove yourself from that mindset and think openly, it's amazing, but also, it can be a little intimidating too.
Yeah, and I mean that always happens, right? Like Sound and Riff, the two platforms I mentioned earlier, I think that we've seen that happen to a degree where like, you know, a critical mass of artists comes in, a bunch of people try a bunch of different things, and then like the meta emerges, like
Right.
the most effective way from the standpoint of like getting a lot of collectors and selling a lot of NFTs emerges, and then that ends up becoming people end up pigeonholing themselves a bit, whether they intend to or not,
Hmm.
just because you know that's what the meta is. But I love that Sound in particular has. I know they've made a big effort to give creators as much flexibility as they can in terms of like how you price your drops, what's the supply of your drops, what are the mechanics, like the minting mechanics. So these are the kind of things, right? That as the tooling and as the experience of being an artist in the space becomes more interesting, and as we're introduced with more options, then it will just naturally, I hope, lead to people being to creativity and like unique, very personalized drops being more so the standard. And I think the same thing is true of the payout side. Like Reveal, for example, I do. I've been doing a series of covers, right, where I'll do acoustic covers of my favorite Web3 songs.
Hmm.
Web3 songs meaning songs that were released in Web3 by artists who are active in Web3, like Sammy Arriaga, John Waltz, these kind of folks. TK, I did my first one was a cover
Yeah,
of
yeah, I think I saw that.
TK,
Yeah.
who's a good friend of mine and co-founder of Campfire. So the way that I set that up, they were paid collect. I priced them pretty low, and I set it up so that the first 250 or so dollars worth of ETH that came into that smart contract, payout contract, went directly to the artist who I'm covering.
Hmm.
So the standard in Web 2 is like you have these big YouTube personalities who built their following by covering other artists' music, right? They're basically like, in many cases, building an audience that they do monetize by borrowing songs from other artists and covering them. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, I love cover culture. I love hearing people put their own spin on someone else's song. I love doing it. That's how I started on YouTube as well. but effectively you've got people kind of profiting off of other people's music, and the attribution isn't always there. I mean, you
Right.
might get like a copyright notice if like I've had this happen where I'll do a cover of a song and then I get a copyright notice on it from like the label. But anyway, I wanted to use the tools we have in Web3 to kind of invert that model a bit, where now I'm doing a cover of TK's song and I'm building in a $250 recoupment fee
Mm.
effectively for TK to say, like, hey, I want to use your song. The first $250 goes directly to you as like a fee, basically,
Hmm.
a creator fee, whatever you want to call it. Um, and yeah, that was my idea for like how could I do covers in a way that is a bit more equitable and that actually drives value back to the original artist. And that's something that wouldn't have been possible in in traditional platforms. So I think that yes, it's great to have control over like the supply and the mechanics around your drops, but also having total control over your revenue streams, especially as like more revenue is generated in the space. Hopefully, like over time, we've got artists continue to see more and more success, and we've got more revenue coming into the space. The creators should be in total control of how that revenue is shared and processed
Yeah.
and how they access it as well. That's kind of our vision.
Totally. And I think that's, that's a beautiful approach to, to recover, to have a sort of upfront recruitment uh in, model. I was actually going to ask you about that, because I know you do create a lot of covers, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot, is sort of, sort of the juxtaposition of the open permissionless ethos of the blockchain, with traditional copyright and IP, and how they don't quite work together.
Mm-hmm.
um, and there are probably going to be a lot of issues with that moving forward, because it's very difficult to take something down once it's on a public blockchain. um,
Right. Right.
so yeah, I mean, is that something that you worked out with, with TK and other artists ahead of time, or is that just something that you said, I'm just going to set it at $250 worth of ETH, and like that's my policy? I'm curious if you had a conversation prior to doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to cover. I would only do this with permission, and the covers I've done so far, they've been with explicit permission of the artist. Actually, in both cases, the last two that I did were Sammy and TK, and they both were like, "You don't need to do that," and like you can cover the song, but you don't need to do the recoupment thing. And I was like, "Well, I want to do it. Like it feels like it feels like a more sensible way to approach this kind of thing." But yeah, to answer your question, explicit permission, yes. I wonder though, when if we start to have any high profile incidents of like like I don't know if you've been following the Grimes AI
Hmm.
story, right? But now she's made this voice model accessible to anyone, and she said you're welcome to do some revenue generating activity, whether selling an NFT, or streaming, making music with this voice model and streaming it, as long as 50% of the proceeds go back to Grimes,
Right.
which we've seen people take advantage of this. Actually, one of the top Sound XYZ drops of all time now is a song that was done with Angel Baby and West Coast using Grimes AI. They sold like over 5,000 editions. Um, but we haven't really seen any high profile examples of like an artist using a Kanye voice model or and minting that as an NFT and profiting from it. What happens then
Hmm.
if someone sells 5,000 NFTs, which is a sizable amount of revenue there, even at a low price point? If someone's generating thousands of dollars in revenue using
Right.
a voice model that they don't actually have the explicit permission to use, then how is that enforced? What happens? We don't
Right.
know, right? So I'm kind of strapped in to see how that space develops, and we're doing some experimentation at Reveal as well with AI voice models, but
Oh, cool.
in a bit of a different approach that we're taking.
Mm. Are, are you able to talk about that at all?
Not in detail, but I mean, I can share the fact that now you can take vocal samples from 5 different artists, 10 different artists, and you can make an entirely new voice, right?
Mm.
Using all of these different drawing on all of these different vocalists. And we think maybe that's something that a lot of people are going to want to do, right? You've got a lot of music collectives, artist collectives, with a lot of different artists. Why wouldn't, if you have a collective of like 8 artists, why wouldn't you also want to experiment with, like, okay, we all have our own music, we all have our own voice, what's our collective voice sound like?
Mm.
So it's just kind of like a cool thought experiment. And in that case, right, if you have a voice model that's trained on 8 different voices, um, all of the folks who provided those vocal samples should be compensated when the voice model is used, right?
Sure.
And that's something that can be built in at the smart contract level
Right.
with Reveal. And you never know. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like maybe the best one I can think of right now is like 88 Rising, if you're
Mm.
familiar with 88 Rising.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a lot of different artists across a lot of different styles. Like, let's say they made a collective voice model and they made a song with that voice model, which became their number one song of all time as a collective, right? And now suddenly it's like, wow, we've just birthed this new artist, that other artists might want to collaborate with. Other people might want to use this voice model to make their own songs. And now you have a new revenue stream for all of the individual vocalists who contributed to that model.
Right.
So yeah, I don't want to give too many specifics on like specifically what we're doing, but we're thinking a lot about this because it's a really good use for blockchain, actually, like being able to attribute being able to attribute a model like this to a specific verified like wallet address, that it's known to be owned by a particular artist. That can remove a lot of the ambiguity, I think, of, can we use it, can we license it, is it really Grimes,
Yeah.
or is it just someone with too much time on their hands that's trying to be an opportunist?
Yeah.
Which there are going to be a lot of people that are capitalizing on this stuff.
Yeah. 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 Unfortunately, there always will be those people.
Such as
But
life.
yeah, such as life. But I mean, it feels right to be, to be proactive about these things, to try to
Yeah.
create precedents in anticipation of these opportunities and entering this space. And because of the lack of like the legal regulation that exists, it's just this huge legal gray area. I feel like the more that legitimate platforms, good actors in the space can be proactive and create precedents through these experiments, the more likely that regulation is going to favor the artists, I think.
Mm-hmm.
At least in the case that you're talking about with, um, or others. Like, I mean, like Grime is like going out there first and saying like, yeah, use my voice, but I get 50%.
Mm-hmm.
Or like Holly Herndon, and her
Mm-hmm.
decentralized autonomous organization Holly Plus, and
Yeah.
like licensing her voice, but retaining control and ownership over how it's used.
Mm. You should have Holly on the podcast. I would love to hear. If you haven't already, I would love to hear y'all's conversation on this topic.
Yeah, I would love to have her on. I've been meaning to reach out to her and to Matt Dryhurst. So if you if you two are listening, consider this an invitation.
Love it.
Um, cool, Alec. Well, it's been really great. I just have one more question for you at this point, unrelated to the things that we've been talking about.
Shoot.
But I ask this to everyone at the end of the show. Um, you're going to a desert island. You get to bring 3 albums with you. What are they?
Oh man, I should have known this was coming. Somehow I'm not prepared. I actually need a moment to. I'm gonna here. Let me sip
That's
on
all
some
right.
water.
That's all right.
Think
Take
about
a
it.
moment. Take a sip of water. You can talk us through your mental process if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
That's what some other people do. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
So can I bring like greatest hits albums? Is that a cop out?
No, I think if it exists, I think it works.
Okay. One that I'm going to bring is Bob Marley's Greatest Hits,
Cool. Great album.
just because the first time I ever went on a backpacking trip, I was in Southeast Asia. I had like some music downloaded, but I didn't have service a lot of the time. And this was like over a month long backpacking trip, and I was listening to Bob Marley's Greatest Hits almost the entire time.
Hmm.
And I didn't get sick of it after like 4 or 5 weeks, just because there's like 35 songs on there. Some of them are so classic. And there's some more underrated Bob Marley songs too. But anyway, that's got to be one.
Nice.
Let's see. Oh God, I'm really an album guy too. Like I love albums, so this is especially hard because there's so many that I love.
Yeah, I mean
But
this is truly an impossible question, and no one's gonna hold you to these three in case you actually end up in this situation at some
mhm.
point. Hopefully not in your life.
Yeah, I hope I don't. But I hope I get to bring 3 albums if I do. I'm gonna go with "Songs in the Key of Life" by Stevie Wonder as number two.
Nice.
Just I don't think I even need to say too much about that one. Besides, it's a classic album. It makes me smile.
Mhm.
There's a lot of, you know, really interesting musical choices on there that I think if I had a lot of time on my hands on this island, I'd have a lot of. There's a lot in there that you can kind of analyze, pick up on different things every time you listen.
Yeah, I think you will have a lot of time on this island.
Ah, okay. And then for a third one, I think I need something that's gonna be like a little bit more upbeat, like a little bit more modern. But what? I've got like 25 years worth of albums to pick from. Um, hmm. Maybe Random Access Memories by Daft
Cool.
Punk.
Yeah, that's actually not the first time that that has been said.
I'm not surprised to hear that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
it's a
either gonna
great
go
record.
that way or like K Tronada,
Nice, nice.
but I think Daft Punk edges them out.
Cool. It's a great trio of records. I think there'll be a lot of smiles on that island, despite your situation.
Yeah, the only consideration is like, do I bring at least one like angry, kind of more brooding album just when I'm like
Mm,
not feeling like I want to listen to Bob Marley and chill?
yeah,
Like, do I
that's
bring
true.
like System of a Down or like Rage Against the Machine for when I'm
You
like
get pissed.
feeling pissed? Yeah, that's.
Yeah,
I guess if I could have an Audible and like swap out one of them
sure.
for a more, uh, it would have to be Rage Against the Machine,
Nice.
Evil Empire, I think.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a good one where you just, in your miserable moments of being stuck, it'll help you get the let out. Yeah, cool, Alec. Well, this has been a really, great conversation. Really appreciate your time and your energy and the work that you're doing in the space.
Appreciate you. Yeah. Happy to happy to share a bit more about what we've been building at Reveal, what I've been doing, um, you know, personally. And I would say I don't know if this is going to go live immediately, but I'm going to be doing another drop in a few weeks. Releasing a new song. It's a collaboration with John Waltz, who's an amazing artist and a good friend of mine. And like I said, Reveal, we've got a bunch of exciting stuff coming this summer, including we're going to be doing a series of bounties with Developer DAO starting next week. So if any
Cool.
developers are listening to this,
Hmm.
there are going to be some opportunities to earn some cash prizes with Reveal. But yeah, that's all I would say. Appreciate you again having me, and hope we can chat again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Where is the best place for someone listening to follow along with all of the various things that you do?
You can find me on Twitter at Alec D'Alelio, and Reveal our Twitter's linked in my bio, so you'll find it there. But the easiest way would just be to go to r3vl.xyz.
Cool. All right. You heard it here. Um, thanks again, Alec. This has been great. Best of luck as you continue to push forward all of these projects. And yeah, absolutely. Let's talk again soon.
Much appreciated.
All right, that's it for this episode of Big Brother and the Hodling Company. I'm your host, McKeegan Voice, and you can keep up with me and all the latest Web3 music trends on Twitter at McKeegan. That's MACEAGON. This show is a production of Decential Media, and you can visit us at decential.io, and remember, only you can prevent and fend off Big Brother.